if you can figure out the answer to this question of how do we find an A player, it becomes so easy to scale teams. And the reason being is that when you go to hire your next cohort and your cohort after that, they literally look at the reps who are there today and go, okay, that's who I need to be. That's the framework.
Evan, welcome to the Kluster Community blog. I'm super excited for this discussion on upskilling reps. But first of all, I'd like to start off with a bit about you. So Evan, what is your story in sales up until this point?
Yeah, thanks, Theo. I appreciate it very much. Great to be here and on with you. Essentially, I got into software a little bit later in my career, as a lot of young professionals are now starting, like right out of school into software. It was a little different for me. But when I identified it, I wanted to make that switch. Big change in my life. And I essentially got my start at a company called Touch Bistro. We were about 30 employees at the time. And in 24 months, I saw it grow from 34 employees to hiring into the 200 employee mark. From there, I had a great opportunity to build out a business development team, essentially from the ground up. I hired and trained, I believe it was over 20 reps. If my memory serves me correctly, then that takes me to a company called Vidyard, to where video enablement software, B2B, total addressable market, really, really exciting company and product. And from there, I essentially had the opportunity to build out yet again another team from the ground up, which was essentially taking the company down market. So we started selling into SMB organizations that typically Vidyard wasn't spending time selling to previously. We've created a very, very successful program in reducing the sales cycle greatly, almost by 60-70%, as well as increasing the close rate on historical business quite significantly. From there, after building that team, the big question that I've been answering over the last 12-18 months is, why did I leave that as we've grown? Because I went from myself and another rep beside me to a global team where I was managing a team in EMEA as well as 2 teams in North America. And why did you leave? And essentially, I had the great opportunity to join Commerce Bear. And Commerce Bear right now is a vertical SaaS company specifically focused on assisting our ICP with selling their products, home goods, furniture, essentially, on channels like Wayfair, Overstock, Amazon, and all the rest. And as we know, in 2020, with the global pandemic, online buyer behavior increased so wildly significantly, and it's not going away. So right now, as an organization, I've got a very small sales team, and it's going to be the 3rd one to date that I've grown from 0 to 100. And just looking to take what I've done before, apply it to a totally different vertical, and essentially grow the sales org successfully.
Awesome. So let's move on. You mentioned that you build a team of a Touch Bistro of many reps. So you've worked with many reps throughout your career. So, like, in your eyes, let's start off with what defines an A player. Maybe let's start with characteristics and then move into some metrics there as well.
Sure. And I think that's the question that everybody's been trying to figure out in my entire tenure. So coming up on 10 years in software sales, everybody's asking that question, and it gets asked before every hiring cycle. It gets asked before every job description is opened up. It gets asked to every leader as to whether or not, in every interview, when you're sitting on that side of the table, how do you identify an A player? It leads me to a story of when I started hiring for the first time in my career, sales reps, business development reps at Touch Bistro. And I was going through interview after interview after interview of all these individuals with resumes that were cookie cutter. Some of them MBA, some of them experience of 4 years. And they just came to the interviews and fell flat. Now, at that point in my career, I knew that this was a make or break moment for me. If I built a rock star team at this company, my career would take off. So, and I knew that the first hire was the most important, because, and I've proven this theory out time and time again, that when you build a team from the ground out, your first core group of hires literally define the culture and how this team is going to define itself around accountability and execution. So if you can figure out the answer to this question, Theo, of how do we find an A player, it becomes so easy to scale teams. And the reason being is that when you go to hire your next cohort and your cohort after that, they literally look at the reps who are there today and go, okay, that's who I need to be. That's the framework. So going back to Touch Bistro, interviewing everybody with cookie cutter interviews, and I knew I needed to knock it out of the park. I ended up hiring an individual who worked at the coffee shop across from the street, a barista.
Wow.
And the reason I did is one simple thing, is that I would show up to the office at that time. I'd be showing up at about 7 a.m. I'd get off my bike downtown Toronto, lock it up, and he would see me from across the street. And as I walked in through the door of the coffee shop, he goes, "Hey, Evan, I got your coffee here. How's your morning going?"
Yeah.
Fire, energy. And meanwhile, I'd have that beautiful conversation start my day. And he impacted my mood. From there, I go across the street and a guy or gal walks in with, again, a fantastic, powerful resume. And I sit down in the interview room moments later after that interaction. So 7:30, 8 o'clock. Person's like wiping sleep out of their eyes. They're tired. How's it going? Oh, no, it's good. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Maybe they're 5 minutes late. And that to me was a huge indicating moment of going. I literally after that interview went across the street and said to this guy who had been doing this so consistently every single day, "Got your Americano, Evan. I've got your Americano. How's your day? How's your day?" I essentially said to him, "I want you to come across the street and talk to me about a job."
Yeah.
The guy became an absolute monster. And here's the deal: software sales is not difficult. The entire industry wants to say that it's extremely difficult. It's not. It's having the internal personality and drive to want to wake up earlier than everyone else and provide other people that experience and bring that energy to every interaction of your day. And I literally just trained him what software was, what we were selling, what the value was, and how to talk to, instead of selling coffee, how to sell software. And his career essentially took off as well.
That's so interesting. I love that story, by the way. And I imagine you still come into contact with people who, like you said, I like that expression, the cookie cutter, CV, like it's perfect. But in reality, like you said, I mean, sales is in many ways quite simple. It's a human thing, isn't it? You don't need to
Yeah.
have, a fantastic MBA or these sorts of things. It's about, can you kind of speak to people on a level and listen? That's the key. So
Yeah.
on that individual who you hired that day, how important was he for the culture of the business, like setting a standard? Did you notice when people then joined, they followed suit and they had this similar sort of kind of passion and energy?
So as soon as I went to hire, and it's so funny you say that, we're going to go back to that, how important he was to the culture. And for
Yeah.
everybody listening, this was not set up because, and I'll give you the punchline now, he actually became the head of culture for that organization.
Wow.
Not just for sales, but for the entire org. And I can't remember if the title was head of culture, but he was the only hire that was hired for culture.
Yep.
Anybody who got hired at that organization had to go through his training platform first. So kudos to him. But back to the early days, I brought him in, trained him, and him and I side by side on the phones. He's learning from me, I'm learning from him, and we're going. From there, hired the next two people. And again, they came in and saw how quickly he moved. They saw how he talked. They saw. So as I'm training these new reps on what we're doing and how we're doing it, I'd sit them right next to him. And fun fact, every time I build teams, whenever I hire somebody new, I actually strategically sit them next to somebody. Back when we were in office, it's a little different now. But I used to strategically sit them next to people where I was like, I think that their personalities will mesh. Furthermore, I always like to place reps very closely where somebody might have a really, really great ability at building business from an outbound perspective, but they struggle sometimes on closing, where then I have a great closer who struggles a little bit on the outbound side of things. You sit those people together and beautiful things happen as long as those individuals are driven for their own success.
Fantastic. And you mentioned there's something. So like what personalities tend to ramp quickly? I mean, you always want that ramp to be, the golden one is 3 months. However, people can do it in people take sometimes 6 months, some people take 2 months. It all varies. What personality are you looking for a quick and straightforward ramp?
over the last 12 months, I've really identified to myself that to be, especially now that we're digital, I can't put you in a room and kind of like force you to pick up the phone because everybody else is. I used to be able to do that. Now you need, it's not, and I hate the term self-starter because it's just too generic. Like we've overused, we've beat that dead horse. So competition, like anybody with a competitive background. And I think that the thing is a few years back in tech sales, a competitive, like saying somebody who is innately competitive kind of got tied into bro culture, and it was kind of like a bad thing, and we didn't really want to say it. But the thing is people who are competitive, like we're talking about Olympians, we're talking about like team players who, although they're so competitive, I saw the Boston Marathon, two people in the lead gave up their lead position to be able to carry some guy who was faint across the finish line. There's nothing wrong with being competitive as long as you're compassionate. But somebody with a background of being competitive is so important in this digital world now, because they might meet with me in the morning just to get the day started, and then I might not see them all day. And they need to be a self-starter who understands that this opportunity in front of their laptop could literally be game-changing for the next number of years of their lives to propel their career to where they want to go. And if they can't identify that, you're never going to be able to motivate them. And I always say that to reps that I bring onto teams. There will be times when they feel motivated by me, but don't look to me to get motivated, because I just simply won't be able to do that. Because as the team scales and all of a sudden I've got 20 reps under my umbrella, I only have so much time and I'm only one person. So you have to look to motivate yourself.
Fantastic. You mentioned this, and something that really resonates with me, how COVID has affected your leadership style. So like, how do you find that you've had to change your leadership style because of the current way of like not seeing people's eye, not going into the office and looking people in the eyes and going like, "You okay?" And then now you're doing it over Zoom. How have you found that you personally have had to adapt and overcome that?
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with my network on this, my very close network.
Yeah.
And one individual, a very good friend of mine, he's head of sales operations at, actually, I should introduce him to you for another one of these. He'd be
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Or yeah. He said to me, he's like, what he's noticing is that the impact is there, it's just slower. And I think I focused so much on speed when I was in office. So, prior to this digital first workforce that we find ourselves in and evolving towards, it was all about speed, time to revenue. So let's onboard as quick as we can. It's going to be uncomfortable for the reps, but it's okay because I'm sitting next to you and you have somebody else sitting next to you, and you're going to sit next to one of the best salespeople on the team for 2 days and just watch what they do. Listen to ask questions. That's gone now. Now it's, hey, watch these asynchronous videos. We're going to meet. And the biggest thing that I found, Theo, is I used to push a lot of tools and strategies onto my team. These are tools that I've proven out increase conversion rates, increase close rates, things like video, like Vidyard.
Yeah.
But what I found is that now that we are in a digital world, you can't just push those on people anymore. I used to be very successful in doing that. Theo, you've never used video? This morning, I'm going to show you how to use it, and then you're going to start using it this afternoon. And once you start seeing, I know it's going to be uncomfortable, but Theo, once you start seeing the response that you get from an outbound prospecting perspective, you're just going to fly with it. And it was like a formula that it worked every time. Now you can't do that. Now you have to let reps take a little bit more time, give them a little bit more breathing room for them to come to you and say, Evan, I want to do this now. So it's kind of changed me to be, and it's something that I keep check on, because I spent a lot of sleepless nights going, am I going to put myself at risk and put my people at risk because of me looking at these things this way? But I think we just need to give people more space to adopt things. And again, if they are that competitive, motivated individual, they will come to you and say, I want to be part of this now. I see how so-and-so is having success with it. Yeah. So I'm no longer taking strategies or tools and just blanketing across the team. Now I'm giving it to those that are inspired to do it. helping them with it, and then letting a little bit more of an organic adoption happen.
That's interesting. So like, do you find those who literally just throw themselves into this crazy world of like of SaaS sales are the ones that tend to rise to the top because they're just willing to try anything? Like, sales is one of those ones where it's constantly challenging. You need to do something. Nobody likes to pick up a phone and call somebody that they've never met before, halfway across
Yeah,
the world and try to sell to them. It's not easy. Do you find that the real great reps are the ones like day one, I'm going to do this and I'm going to try my best to do this, and I'm going to fail 100 times, but I'm going to be okay once, and that's all that matters?
I think this is the biggest egg to crack.
Yeah,
Okay. It's always said, and you just said it, Theo, nobody likes to pick up the phone. If you
yeah,
have that mindset as a salesperson, you shouldn't enter this business. And some people are going to hear that and go, wow, this guy's a jerk. But here's the deal. You look at professional athletes, you look at EMS, people working on the front lines in healthcare, especially over the past couple of years. If you don't have some type of love and desire for what you do, even though it is hard, you're in the wrong business. And again, shout out to all the emergency services workers in healthcare over the past couple of years. Probably the most difficult thing we could fathom that anybody in an occupation did over the last 18, 24 months. But those individuals, they won't survive if they wake up every day going, I don't want to do this. And we did see a lot of them quit.
yeah.
And again, my heart goes out to all those individuals. But it's strange to compare sales to that. So let's not get it, say that this is wrong, or like, I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm just saying, for a salesperson, it's hard to pick up the phone, but they've got to spend the time to adopt it into what they do and then learn to love it. Much like those crazy people who go running and run 10K every morning in the icy weather, but that's how they do. And that's how they do their life. That's a lifestyle choice. Whereas if I did it, I wouldn't be able to be on this conversation today. And I'd be laying down on the floor. But I think that's the biggest thing. I think that AEs need to, or account executives, salespeople, especially in tech sales, digital first. If you don't enjoy, if it's hard, that's okay. But if you can't get to a point of actually enjoying the hard work, it's you won't get to the level that you're hoping you will.
Fantastic. You've mentioned there, constantly pushing the envelope, as they say, and pushing standards, right? So in your eyes, how difficult is it for reps themselves and you as leaders as well to bridge that gap between a C-level rep, a B-level rep, and an A-level rep? Is that C to A possible? Is that B to A possible? And even is that A to D possible?
All possible. And I
Yeah,
think that leaders should be held more accountable for reps that are a D player rep, that are coming in early, making the activities. Like, I've never given up on a rep who's struggling, but is putting in more work than everybody else on the team, because that to me is the leader's failure. I've had reps where they're a D player and they don't show up. Everybody, they're showing up 2 hours later than everybody else. Like,
yeah,
that is something that we cannot coach. But if you have a rep that's showing up as D player and they just don't have it, a lot of leaders will move that individual from their organization, saying they just don't have it. They don't have it. The higher leaders should be looking at that leader saying, maybe you don't have it, because they showed up, they had that competitiveness, they had that grit. They were doing more phone calls and activities than anyone else, which means they want to do this. So are
yeah.
you the best coach to be coaching the people who are representing our company on the front lines? It's all possible. Again, what's not possible is to take a B player rep and make them an A player when they don't want to be.
Yeah.
They'll say they want to be, Theo, but there's a difference between saying you want to be better and actually identifying steps to get there and then executing on those said steps.
That's so interesting that you mentioned that. Like, if there's a D player who's turning up early and putting in the work, then you should look at leadership if they're not becoming a CB, and so on. Because I've actually found this myself. In many things, talent does exist, right? Like intelligence, athletic ability. But with sales, I was thinking the other day, I was speaking to a colleague. Like, it's probably one of the only kind of professions where talent that it doesn't exist. You're not born a talented salesman or woman, you know, you're just not. So it's super interesting, and like when it comes to sales, it's hard work, dedication, and consistency that really gets you to the extra level. But I always ask this question to every sales leader I speak to, and it's always an interesting one. You know, how often does an A player really come about in your eyes? And it's all kind of depends on how you define one, of course. But how often does one come around?
Never. You don't get
Okay,
A players, you make A players.
nice. I've
And
never had that one before.
no, and a lot of people think I get people. I'm hiring, I'm giving you a lot of money, so I need you to deliver. You don't find A players, you make them. You coach them into A players. And I'm steadfast on that. And I've seen individuals with much lesser resumes surpass those that have been A players. Because the biggest thing with an A player is that if they're told that they're an A player, you see this in pro sports all the time, right? The best of the best, the best. All of a sudden, young rookie comes in and replaces them in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that you get people. I believe you develop people. And I think that that's also too the most important job as a sales leader. And if you can do that, you become very valuable as a sales leader. Whether you miss target this quarter or not, they go, holy smokes, look at the growth, the caliber of people we're bringing in and how we're educating them. And that's also one of the biggest things that will help you with talent retention. Because
Yeah.
AEs don't leave a company because they don't like selling the product, or they don't like the organization, or they're not getting paid enough. They leave because they're not getting leveled up by the person who is literally they report into, whose job that is. Not to motivate them, but to level them up.
So would you say A players, everyone can have an A player month, can't they?
Sure.
The hardest thing in sales is consistency. You know, you look at, if you liken it to basketball, there's plenty of people who had good seasons, but you know, there's only a handful who are like LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, right? So are you saying that like as an A player, consistency is one of the, it kind of goes on to my final question for you here, like top 3 characteristics of an A player, is consistency up there as the absolute, you know, the most important characteristic, would you say?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
yeah, consistency. I had a rep one time in my past, and if he watches this, he'll know who he is. He was struggling to close. He was struggling to open. He was struggling to be as conversationally intelligent as he is today on these calls. And he just fought fire with fire. And all he did was he put in more time. He booked more meetings. He had a lesser close rate, but he ended up top of the board because he just simply had more at bats. And the thing is I think that this, again, we over romanticize software sales, and everybody wants to talk about closing the big deal and like, look what I did 2 years ago. The thing is like, if you go in and work in this individual's case, book more pipeline, have more at bats than everyone else, all of a sudden you're closing more revenue than everyone else. And the best part is, with that amount of at bats, you actually start to level up your ability to close, and then all of a sudden this guy just went over everybody, and became a leader of a team of his peers. And again, to your point, it's consistency. And it's being able to do it month over month, but you also have to break that down into week over week and day over day and hour over hour. Because for a sales rep, I always break it down with new AEs to say you have 21 days in month, like business calendar days, give or take 21 days. You've got, and then you can break it all the way down to how many hours you have, to how many meetings you need in order to hit the target. And the thing is the one last part I'll put on that, and we can move to the next question, Theo, is I've always coached leaders when I've brought in, I had to bring a leader up, and then I'm managing a manager. I've always said your biggest focus is helping reps on their recovery time. And what that is when reps are fairly new to the game, or even maybe they're not, they just haven't learned this yet, and you hear a no after a big deal, sometimes that can defeat a rep's confidence and momentum for an entire week. Well, they just lost 25% of their month. Production's out the window. They're beat up about it. They're still talking about it on Thursday when it happened on Monday. The best thing you can do for a rep as a sales leader and as a coach is to help them with the recovery time. And when reps start getting really good, they'll hear no, and then they'll be upset. There's a lot of passion in it, of course. They'll seek to understand why where the no came from. They'll do a bit of a post-mortem in their head as to what they could have done different. They go for a coffee and they come back and they go get the next one within an hour. And that's like the true A player mentality is like, I've only got 21 days, so I ain't letting this situation take 4 of them.
That's fantastic. Yeah, the way you put that is so true, and I really enjoyed that. That's a great one. If we move on to the last question now, top 3 characteristics. We've got consistency in there. What would be your other 2 that you would tell any other aspiring high performance rep that they need to develop?
Characteristics to be successful, or the characteristics that make you successful?
That make you successful, let's say.
So somebody comes into an org, what characters do they need to make them successful?
Yes.
Again, I'm really big, and this is new for me, but I'm really big on the competitive side. I think, what was the one that you said, Theo?
Consistency.
Yeah, I think consistency is there, but it needs to be developed. I think the last one is just coachability.
Yeah.
I think the will, like, and when I say coachability, I mean the willingness to do things. Where I've seen reps become very successful very quickly versus not is you need to try everything and you need to lean into it full tilt.
Yeah.
If you're seeing somebody on your team using video, and I keep going back to video because it's just something I have a lot of experience with my sales teams, as well as sales teams that I sold those products to. If you have somebody on your team who's absolutely crushing it, they're making it look easy. Okay. And let's never confuse that with they're not working hard. Actually, the most talented people in this business will make it look easy.
Okay.
And they're using video, and you go to them and you talk to them as another AE and you say, what's your secret sauce? Well, first of all, there's a million things. But if you start to understand, it's something like he or she's going, I'm using video on my proposals, on my follow-ups. When they see it, I'm like, and furthermore, it's given like this personal touch for me to garnish a response. A lot of AEs will just go back to their desk or back to their own digital world, their environment, and go, and they won't do anything with it. The best reps out there will go grab those little nuggets of information and then lean into it that afternoon, that day, and start sending 50 videos to, and I'm using videos as an example, but, or like that talk track or whatever it is. Like when you pick out these nuggets of information from people who are very successful or have a lot of experience in the space, it's what you do with it. And I think that is one of the biggest things. So again, let's wrap that into coachability. But that's one of the biggest differentiators between somebody who's wildly successful in a 12-month time period to not.